heroes, villains, sinners, faithful and unfaithful. Welcome to Who Yelling Now, episode 7 in our season 2 series saga, The Garden of Evil. This is where we discuss the topics of villains. Episode 7 is titled Who Else? Copyright Mackenzie. When flesh and blood steps into the ring with injustice, it is never just a fight. It is a declaration. Justice is worth more than breath itself. But the world twists the mirror. Today's hero is named villain in the court of powerful. Tomorrow, that same villain may be carved into monuments and textbooks as a saint. This is the cycle where truth is punished before it is praised. And we must ask ourselves, will we wait for history to rewrite the names? Or will we stand in the present and call the villain what they really are? A lover of justice? When a people are named villain for simply existing, when survival itself is misread as violence, we must ask the question the world keeps avoiding. Who else? Who else has carried such weight? Who else had been named violent while living the very ethic of restraint? Who else has been called savage while teaching the world the meaning of grace? Who else was stolen from homelands, dragged across oceans, branded, auctioned, their names stripped, their gods buried deep, and still sung freedom songs? So beautiful, the heavens leaned down to listen. Who else was told, "You are nothing," and answered with, "We are everything. We are music. We are movement. We are memory that will not die." Who else could face burning crosses, sheriffs with dogs, laws written to erase them, streets painted with their blood, and still walk in peace, carrying signs that said justice instead of weapons that said revenge? Who else raises their children not with the curse of retaliation, but with the commandment of survival? Who else teaches you will not bow, you will not break, but you will not become them either? Who else turns grief into gospel, chains into jazz, anguish into hip-hop anthems that pulse across the globe? Who else teaches the world how to pray, how to sway, how to find joy in the cracks of despair? Who else absorbs centuries of insult, yet greets the dawn with laughter? Who else is denied justice today, yet still dares to believe in justice tomorrow? Who else takes the world's sharpest blade and answers not with blood, but with mercy, fierce enough to shake empires? Tell me, who else? Who else would sustain such abuse and still rise with a smile, still rise with a song, still rise with a love wide enough to cradle even those who despise them? They are the ultimate heroes without capes. The ones who never took the opportunity to become the villains in any generation. The ones who endured, who uplifted, who carried the world's cruelty on their shoulders and still offered the world compassion in return. Who else? No one. No one but them. No one but us. And yet, think about it. When some rise against injustice, the world does not see restraint. It does not see the grace. It does not see the miracle of survival. No. The world often sees only a threat. It stamps the word villain across the forehead of anyone daring enough to demand justice. But history has a strange memory, because the villain of today, who risks their life for what is right, becomes the hero of tomorrow, when truth finally catches up to courage. Let's move to poem 2. Villain today, hero tomorrow. They said I was reckless, that I loved danger more than breath. But tell me, what is the worth of a quiet life if silence lets injustice feast? I struck with words, with protest, with fire, knowing each step pressed me closer to the grave. Yet the chains on the innocent rattled louder than the beat of my fragile heart. So, call me a villain. Stamp my face with warning. Lock my name in whispers. But know this: I was never fighting for myself. I was tearing at the veil so that tomorrow's children might wake in a room lit by justice instead of shadows fed by fear. And when they sculpt the statue from the ashes of this fight, history will remember the villain of today was simply the mirror that justice held up to a frightened world. Friends, but when tomorrow arrives, when the villain is finally called hero, when the world rewrites its history books to paint justice in brighter colors, they do not just stop at honor. They go further. They rename us. Yesterday's terrorists becomes today's founders. Yesterday's barbarians become today's patriot. Yesterday's enemy becomes today's leaders. The mouth that once spat out curses now carves monuments with our names. And so we step into the next truth. The next poem. The Renamed. They called us terrorists, dogs, barbarian, with fire in our eyes. We march barefoot through dust, with only rage as our shield. One day, the statues wore our names. One day, the flag kisses our colors. One day, the children memorized us as saviors. And then, our own children called us tyrants, for we wore the crown like it was iron teeth. The names changed, but the hunger didn't. 2 generations. Did you know it takes less than 2 generations for memory to soften? For blood to dry? Grandfather roared against empires, but father built an empire of his own. Grandmother wept for freedom, but mother learned to silence the next voice that sounded too much like hers. And the cycle spun from freedom songs to siren of the state. But names are slippery things. They shine like metals in one's generation, then curdle like warnings in the next. Because once we are renamed, once the world lifts us from villains to heroes, from rebels to rulers, the story does not end there. No, a shadow follows every crown. And too often, the ones who once wore chains learn to forge chains for others. The saviors become sovereigns. The liberators become lawmakers. And slowly, silently, the new face of hope hardens into the new face of fear. So, who becomes the new face of fear? Poem 4. They crowned us hope. They said, "At last, justice wears your skin." But the ink on the treaties had not died. Before we began writing laws against the same shadows we once were, the hunted became hunters. The oppressed became the architect of new cages. And justice hid her face, ashamed to be spoken in our mouths. What did we truly inherit? Let's talk inheritance. Children inherit more than land. They inherit stories, legends carved in teeth of suffering. But what happens when the legend turns into the lie? My son looks at my medals and asks, "Who did you kill for these?" My daughter looks at my speeches and asks, "Who did you silence for this throne?" We wanted to give them freedom, but instead we handed them the same chains, polished gold. So you may be asking yourself, why so soon? Why does it take less than 2 generations to forget the whip, to forget the cell, to forget the name villain pressed into our backs? Maybe because power is the sweetest lie, and we drink it faster than water. Maybe because suffering teaches us how to fight, but never how to govern. Maybe because in the mirror of justice, we only ever saw our wounds, and once they're healed, we mistook our reflection for God's. So, here we are again, the new villains in old costumes, waiting for tomorrow's rebels to call us by the names we swore we erased. And so, the question burns us still. Why so soon? Why does justice so quickly rot into power? Why do yesterday's heroes so often become tomorrow's villains? It is the curse of empires, the hunger of history, the sickness of forgetting. But there is one people who never followed this pattern. One people who carried the weight of centuries and yet never passed the burden forward in revenge. One people who remembered, who taught their children to endure without becoming. They broke the cycle. They carried the name villain without proof, generation after generation, and still they did not retaliate. Poem 5. They did not retaliate. Not in mass. Not in an army retaliation that would have been justified. The world gave them chains, and they forged hymns. The world gave them whips, and they gave back prayers that shook the heavens open. They were dragged across oceans, their names stripped, their gods hidden in the marrow of their bones. But even as the lash tore skin, they whispered, "We shall live, we shall love, we shall last." Empires expected fire in return. They waited for the torches, the knives, the revenge, but instead they saw children singing, hands clapping rhythm into survival, voices turning sorrow into Sunday choir. The blood cried from the soil. Yet no armies marched in retribution. Instead, they marched in peace, barefoot, down highways of hate, holding signs that said, "Justice? when the world gave them nothing but grief. Generations passed, but the memory never softened. They did not forget the slave ships, the auctions, the burning crosses, the nooses swaying like false fruit. Yet memory did not rot into vengeance. It ripened into testimony. They raised their children not with the creed of retaliation, but with a commandment of endurance. You will not bow, you will not break, but you will not become them either. They absorbed centuries of insult and still found a way to cradle humanity in their palms. They bent but did not shatter. They bled but did not poison. They mourned but did not curse the unborn. This is God-like. This is miracle work in flesh. To walk through fire and still pour water for the thirsty. To live surrounded by injustice and still believe in justice of tomorrow. This is God-like. They are not villains. They are not what they were called. They are the unbroken voice of survival, the sacred witness of restraint, the proof that love is stronger than every empire's cruelty. And when history asks, who showed the greatest mercy? It will not be the conquerors, nor the kings, nor the nations with armies. It will be the people who could have retaliated, but chose instead to remain human. The world should bow when they speak. The world should hush when they sing, for their song is not vengeance. Their song is resilience. Their song is love, fierce enough to forgive without forgetting, to endure without becoming the monster. They did not retaliate. And that restraint is the most divine rebellion humanity has ever known. And so, friends, we return to the question, who else? Who else carried the chains of century, yet refused to pass them down? Who else bore the fire of injustice, yet chose to cradle humanity instead of burn it? Who else was named villain without cause, yet never became villain in truth? It takes empires only a generation to forget their promises, to rot from liberators into tyrants. But this people, this extraordinary people, refused that curse. They remembered, they endured, they rose. They are the ultimate heroes without capes, the guardians of mercy in a merciless world, the witnesses who stood before history's darkest trial and answered not with vengeance, but with vision. So let the world bow, I say, when they speak. Let the world hush, I say again, when they sing. For this, in their voice lives the greatest proof that love is stronger than empires, that endurance is mightier than the sword, that restraint is the highest form of power. Who else could have done this? No one. No one but them. No one but us. We are not villains. We are heroes without capes. This is episode 7. This is Who Yelling Now? And still, the yell is not finished. Join me in the next episode